Hello, my name is Jennie Beeson. I'm the Program Associate here at the National Youth Advocacy Coalition, and this is the final section of the Safe Spaces training module for creating safe spaces for LGBTQ youth. Now, after you finish this last section, I want to make sure to remind you that you will want to finish your post-test so that you can send it on to me, and I can send you your Safe Zone materials after we've seen that you finished it. And also make sure to get out your worksheet, and I'm going to remind you to push pause at any times that you want to take notes with this specific training module. So we referred to policy many times along the way throughout the last five training modules, and if you haven't figured out already, policies are a way to institutionalize all the things that you've worked on throughout the training. It's a way to outline and strengthen the ways that you've created to making your spaces safer by using your policies. So what do we mean by when we talk about policy? We mean the written regulations of your agency and also the unspoken agency culture. So some of these things don't have to be written, but they can be modeled through practice and discussion and kind of consensus amongst your group. The objectives for this last module is first we will try to understand what exactly policy means and how it affects safe spaces for LGBTQ youth. Then we're going to work on assisting you in taking a critical analysis on your own organization so you can start your assessment, much like the past videos that we've gone through. Then we will talk about barriers to policy change and give you some resources to help you overcome barriers in the future. So first we're going to start with an example of a scenario of how policies affect our level of LGBTQ competency and your ability to meet the needs of the community thoroughly. I'm going to read the scenario and then I'll have you push pause to write down your own thoughts about what's happening in the scenario here. So, the Youth Center provides an open space where all youth can drop in between the hours of 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. Some days, Alex visits the center wearing women's clothing and asks to be referred to as Jasmine. In addition to facing harassment from the other youth, all the volunteers joke with Alex that the clothes do not fit and refuse to use Jasmine. There have been a few instances that Alex has been found sleeping on the couch in the center early in the morning. Now push pause and write down what policies you think are at play here that might not be inclusive of Alex. Alright, so there's probably a lot of different things that you can find that happened or that are affecting Alex by these, or Jasmine by these policies. But here are some things that stuck out to me, and of course there are others. The first one was gender-specific policies on clothing. So if there are specific policies that say that biological males must wear the gender-specific clothing that is synonymous with being a man, then that's a policy that you're going to want to look at. Policies on interactions amongst volunteers and youth. So are there policies that would prevent volunteers from joking about Alex or by not being supportive of Alex's identity or his gender expression? And then policies on youth-to-youth interactions. So how are those interactions, the harassment that this youth is facing, who governs that arena? And then policies on times the center is open. So if Alex doesn't have a place to sleep and we're finding that Alex is spending time sleeping in the center, then maybe we need to think about the different times that are more friendly to youth to have the center be open. You know, if nighttime is a better time for the center to be open, then maybe that's something to think about, or think about ways of changing those. And if you can't offer those services, then maybe what about changing the actual services you do serve, or or being able to refer to Alex to a place where Alex might be able to find a place to sleep, so that you're making sure that your policies are designed to protect LGBTQ youth and not shut them out. And so an important part is just finding the ways to meet the community needs where they are, instead of deciding what they should be. So policies, we're going to want to take a critical stance with the way you look at your policies, and this could require, you know, some going into the books and figuring out what is already taking place. So do policies guarantee protections for youth, including sexuality and gender identity? If you don't see those kind of buzzwords, then maybe there's something you want to add onto there. Do your policies allow for youth to participate in activities that correspond with their gender identity? So despite a youth's biological or biology, biological sex, are they allowed to go with what their gender identity tells them to do? So are trans men included in gay men talking groups? Those kind of things. And also, are safer sex practices encouraged for a spectrum of sexualities? And these are just kind of ideas of what kind of policies you can look at, and look at how it could make a difference in your center or your organization. This resource outlines sample language for LGBTQ inclusive policy specific to students in schools, but it definitely can be tailored to community-based organizations or health centers, any of those kind of youth-serving organizations. It's called Bending the Mold, an action kit for transgender students. We have talked about this one already in the past, but again, it's a very valuable resource. It has sample policies, wordings on policies that you can use, and these are just 3 of them, but you can find a lot more starting from here. So once you've begun to look at your policies, one thing you might come across is the many barriers that might be in place. It may take research to understand your policies, but assessing your policies are the first part. So step 1 and step 2 are assessing the written policies and the unspoken agency culture, and just being able to be critical of it and understand where it's coming from and see where you have to go. And then next, in your venture to change policy or to add policy, you want to identify allies in policy change. And then the 4th step, I would say, is working on your barriers. So deciding what those barriers are and employing the strategies that we've come up with. So before we get to that, we're going to talk about what those barriers might be. Now, these are just some of the barriers that we thought might be present. We could go over each one right now, but there is a worksheet to go through this more in depth, since many of these are so unique and it's not sure which ones you might be coming up against. And so make sure, if you need to, take some time to push pause and go through this. Unless you know which policies you're wanting to change, you might not know which barriers you want to address at any time. So of course this is a piece that you can access later on, and you should definitely look at your worksheet to be able to kind of figure out what barriers you're going to want to look at. And again, it's in your worksheet for your. So once you have kind of identified what policies you are going to, or practice changes that you're going to want to make, and you find the barriers that you are anticipating, then you'll decide which strategies you're going to employ to change that. And the Approaching Barriers with Strategies worksheet can be accessed on the website, just like I've said before. And this is a different one from your Safe Spaces training module worksheet. So you have 2 worksheets for this module. And of course, if you need further assistance, you can always ask NYAC for more help with my information at the end. So we have all these different ways of trying to change policy, but what if you still cannot modify unsafe policies or add inclusive policies, because we can't all do everything and we don't all have time. So if you're a volunteer, maybe you aren't able to change policy, but there are other things you can do. One thing you can do is utilize your networks, and there are things you can do for yourself as a professional that may or may not be able to help you in your journey to creating safe spaces. So professional development by attending LGBTQ and other cultural diversity training on your own, making a priority for you as a professional, even if it's not a priority for your organization, is one thing to consider. And then there's professional networks that you can kind of take advantage of. Some examples: the National Association of Social Workers, or LGBTQ affinity groups or subcommittees of professional organizations. I know also that many unions have LGBTQ groups as well that you can access. And that might have more information, or you'll be able to talk to other people about how they instituted change in their own ways. Another way you can do this is a service actually that NYAC offers. It's called the NYAC Network, and it includes local, state, and national organizations who are all engaging LGBTQ youth. So you can sign up to a listserv, a national listserv, to kind of share best practices or understand how other folks are doing the things that you're trying to do. We offer very specific technical assistance to any of the kind of needs that your organization might need, from training to website help to creating materials. And we have a members-only website where you can access some of those things that we have available. And then we also have exclusive access to policy work, in which we're talking about policy work on a national, federal level, so of actual legislation, that we want to hear what you have to say and be able to amplify your voice in that arena as well. And then, of course, access to free or discounted services. Once you've done all these things, I think it's important just to remember that you've already taken the first step in changing the space around you. All the things we've done and all the things we've gone over in these 6 training modules are parts of being an ally, which is a person who steps up to actively advocate for LGBTQ youth. So just by taking these things that we've learned in these modules to heart, then you can really affect the way change happens around you. And you can show that you're an advocate, you're an ally. And of course, being part of the solution means that you're not the problem, and that you're trying to affect the problem actively. Now, the last part we have here is the resources. So I want to mention again to make sure to go to these resources: Bending the Mold and the Lambda Legal LGBTQ Policies, Training and Services for Child Welfare Agencies that you can access to make sure that you have the resources that you need to change your policy. And of course, we offer technical assistance around this as well. And I would say that this is the end of our training, but it's not. It is only the beginning. This just serves as your assessment to creating your safe space, and the next part is you. The next part is you being able to contribute to a safer world for LGBTQ youth, and for all youth really, and for all people, because once all of us are safe, then we can really say that, you know, we are part of something bigger than us. And then, of course, since you've just finished, and one way you can show youth in your center or other adults or professionals in your center or your organization is getting your Safe Zone materials. So by submitting your pre-test and post-test, you will receive free Safe Zone posters and palm-sized stickers that you can place in any spaces around you. And of course, if we get those pre-test and post-tests, then you get them for free. So that's one way that you can show that you've taken this training and that that this is important to you. And once again, here's our contact information. This is where you can send hard copies of your Safe Spaces pre-test and post-test to get your training and make sure, or to get your materials and make sure that you say you want materials. And lastly, this is my contact information. So if you have any questions or if you want to know more about other services that NYAC provides, I would be happy to assist you. Thank you so much for being part of the Safe Spaces training module in creating safe spaces for LGBTQ youth. We're very happy that we could serve you this way. And have a great venture out there in the big world.